Who wins Game 6?
Well, it better be the Cavs. I mean, when you're up by 41, you're blowing them out of the building. You make them look, like Skip pointed out earlier in the series, like a bunch of mannequins, just non-existent, didn't show up, don't even know why they wasted time going through customs to get to the United States. They wasted everybody's time with their performance in Game 5. If you're the Cleveland Cavaliers and you see how Toronto performed just the other night, why can't you come into Toronto and handle your business if indeed you're a championship caliber team? There's simply no excuse for it. I'm going to repeat this. I think Dwayne Casey has done an exceptional job. Valanciunas coming back, hitting all 4 of his shots in Game 5, still proved to be a defensive liability. Biyombo somehow, some way is allergic to playing once he departs from the border, from the Canadian border, because every time he shows up in the States, he does close to nothing. But in Toronto, he's absolutely sensational, particularly as a defender and a rebounder. And I just look at it from this standpoint that it should be hard fought. There is no doubt. The home crowd will be here. They will be psyched and hyped. Crowd outside in Jurassic Park and inside the building. It should be special. But in the end, they don't have LeBron James. And LeBron James needs to close the deal. LeBron James doesn't need to go the last 5.5 minutes without attempting a shot. He's too big time for that. Make sure he shoots the damn ball. Kevin Love, you showed up the other day, dropped 25. Everybody's making such a big deal about that. I'm not caught up in that. Why? Because it was a lopsided contest. He had all 6 of his shots skip in the first half. He finished with 25 points, but it was a runaway. The question about Kevin Love is not that he can play. We know he can play. We know he has skills. We know he can get it done. The question about Kevin Love is, where are you when the game is tight and waning in the fourth quarter? Can we find you, or do we need to put an APB out for you? That is the question about Kevin Love. So to me, I don't care what he did in Game 5 because it was a lopsided contest. I care about what he's capable of doing when the game is tight, when palms are sweaty, and he's got to show up and produce. But in the end, all Toronto has, essentially, as far as I'm concerned, is Kyle Lowry, who's miniature, very gifted, a rough rider, but I don't think should be able to hang with Kyrie Irving, or at least they'll negate one another. And then, of course, there's DeMar DeRozan, who doesn't shoot threes. And his mid-range game is elite as it may be. As long as his skill set is that way, we got to respect it. But he shouldn't be able to offset or usurp the greatness of LeBron James. LeBron James not only needs to shoot the ball late, but he needs to guard DeMar DeRozan a hell of a lot earlier, not waiting till a guy has 30-plus points before he picks him up defensively. LeBron needs to take on the challenge of guarding DeMar DeRozan earlier so he can nullify and neutralize him. If he does that, and Kyrie negates Kyle Lowry, then you force a Terrence Ross, a DeMar Carroll, and others to step up and do something they're not accustomed to doing, which is why Cleveland shouldn't even have to deal with a Game 7. They should close the deal tonight, and I anticipate that they will.
I cannot tell you how much I agree with every word you just spoke, and then some. To me, speaking of my reference to mannequin defense, what was even more shameful than the mannequin defense that Toronto played in Games 1 and 2 at Cleveland was that Cleveland went to Toronto and lost 2 games. I don't get it. I can't fathom it. I can't compute it. I can't explain it. Cleveland is so much better than Toronto. I realize what Jen said, that they lost the 2 regular season games. Now they've lost the 2 postseason games in Toronto. I get that. But this ought to be Cleveland by 15 or 20 points tonight because we've seen how much better they are. Obviously, it's in Cleveland. But Stephen A., if you will, allow me to recite the margins of victory for Cleveland at Cleveland. Game 1 was by 31, Game 2 by 19, Game 5 by 38. And then you go to Toronto and lose by 15 and by 6. And Kevin Love, for whom I have not all that much love, disappears. And Kyrie is not Kyrie. And then the King disappeared down the stretch. It's inexcusable. They've got to right the wrong tonight. I'm with you. That they should just flex their superiority right out of the box and end this thing tonight in 6. And I'll tell you why I think they could psychologically. Help me out with this. Deep down, Do you really think the Raptors want to go back to Cleveland and get humiliated one more time, a fourth time? I just, if you look inside their hearts, you know, deep down they got to be thinking, God, do we really want to go back there again and go?
I don't think they do. I don't think they do, but I do think their passion to win one last game in front of their home crowd is bigger than their lack of desire to go back to Cleveland.
Maybe. But allow me to give a quick comment to the story. I believe one of the I think it was the Toronto Star had it, that DeMarre Carroll, Corey Joseph, two good guys, by the way, were hanging out in the casino around 2 a.m. the night before or morning before that Game 5. I don't care about that. The point is, I think Corey and DeMarre could have gone to sleep at 6 o'clock and it wouldn't have changed the fate of that game. And by the way, that casino, you know Cleveland a lot better than I do, but it's like within walking distance, right? Isn't it downtown?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay, so okay, so they're just walking through the casino. It's no big deal. It had no impact on Game 5. And you know me with my curfew rule, nothing good happens after midnight, but this is different. This isn't a nightclub or a strip club. It's just walking through the casino, hanging out, killing time. And both those guys, as you know, probably better than me, but I think they're pretty decent guys from all I've heard.
They're pretty decent guys. They don't get in any trouble.
No.
From my understanding, they weren't inebriated. We're not talking about alcohol. We're not talking about weed. We're not talking about trouble or anything. It's guys that couldn't sleep, so decided to go for a walk through the casino, because you certainly don't need to be walking the streets of Cleveland, I can tell you that. But the bottom line is that it's much ado about nothing, and I don't think that it should be a big deal in anybody's eyes.
So what's your gut feeling on the final score?
I think that it'll be tight until the middle of the fourth quarter, and then LeBron James and them will step it up. They'll probably pull away, and I can see them winning by 12, something along the lines of 102-90.
I'm going to go by 15. It has to end tonight. It's time to be over. Put Toronto out of its Cleveland misery.
If it does not end tonight, Cleveland should be ashamed of itself.
That's correct. Agreed.
Well, for note, the home team has won all 8 meetings between the two teams this season. Cavaliers 0-4, as we've mentioned, in Toronto. Game 6 tonight in Toronto, 8:30 on ESPN. As expected, Baylor fired head coach Art Briles yesterday for his role in the school's sexual assault scandal. But how should the NCAA handle this situation from here on out? That's next on First Take.